yeah, just being curious and being willing to be vulnerable, because it is scary when you're like, I'm a student, I don't know anything, you're amazing, will you answer my questions? Like, there is something very vulnerable about that, because if you are a fan of someone or idolize them, there's a chance, there's always that chance of like, oh, maybe they won't see it or they won't respond. But I've found taking that chance is so rewarding, and in my experience, everybody is so lovely that is in the industry.
Welcome to Femme Forte, the show that amplifies the voices of women and non-binary creatives in music and the performing arts. I'm your host, Amanda DeFries. From Broadway to the Blue Man Group, Mackenna Tolfa is the definition of bold curiosity. In this episode, she takes us behind the scenes of her work in the Mean Girls musical national tour and how initiative and self-discovery have shaped her career. We talk about being a woman in the global music spaces, saying yes to the unknown, and carving your own creative identity. This was such a dynamic and uplifting conversation. I had so much fun hearing her story, and I know you will too. Welcome to another episode of Femme Forte. Today I have a very special guest, and I'm so excited to bring her on the show. We have Mackenna Tolfa.
Hi, I'm super excited to be here, so thank you for having me.
Of course. I just want to dive right in because for those of you that are watching or listening, this is actually our first time meeting in person.
Yes, it is.
Which is actually how frequently my guests are. It's either I know them personally or meeting first time in person. And one of the things that I just am really excited and feel really special about is, we've kind of been online friends for almost a year-ish or something like that. So it's really wonderful to finally get to meet you in person and talk about all your amazing accomplishments. So you are a percussionist, as am I. Mm-hmm. So how did you get your start into percussion?
Yeah, so I'm from Wisconsin, and there's a very big polka culture there.
Yeah.
My uncle growing up was an accordion player, and it was a tradition to have him come to all of our birthday parties, really any holiday, and play.
Yeah.
And my older cousin at the time was learning drum set, and so he would play with him often. And one day, I think it was at my cousin's birthday party. My uncle was like, why don't you give this a shot? I'll try to teach you some things. And that's kind of where it began. Drum set was the first instrument I learned from him. So definitely entry level.
Yeah.
And then eventually I was entering elementary school, and my mom had got me into piano. And so I really studied that from really elementary through high school. And it just so happened that my teacher was a master of percussion and also played piano. And she, amazing percussionist, and had sort of set herself up to be in the performance world, and then decided to take a step back and do something totally different and open a studio. And so basically journey started as a piano player. And then when it came time to choosing the instrument to play, weirdly, I picked trumpet initially.
Oh, okay.
And was but those people behind me are really cool, and I think I want to play loud things instead. And so then ended up taking lessons with her for piano and percussion up until college. And then when the decision came to pick what I wanted to do, was one of the hardest choices I've ever had to make. But I went with percussion and have been really passionate about mallet instruments for quite a while. And then oddly ended up doing rock music instead out of college. My career has really taken what I intended to do and what I am now doing, very different things. I entered my senior year of college wanting to write music for marimba, mm-hmm. and was thinking about taking some lessons out of college with people kind of all around internationally that I was really inspired by. And then senior year came around, and I ended up getting a job with Blue Man Group and playing, like I said, rock music and being on stage in a character, which couldn't be more different than what I had intended. But just going to show, like, for me at least, my path has never been a straight line. It's always been kind of going in all sorts of directions. So,
yeah. So how have you noticed like that shift and pivot? Like, has that changed, you know, how you said wanting to really focus on mallet percussion? Is that still a love that you still have, or have you now figured that doing more of like the rock style music is actually really fun and pursuing more of that path?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm always going to be somebody that doesn't set, like, I have a hard time sticking with one thing.
As do I can understand.
Yeah. I think the door that's been open for me is realizing where there's similarities between different styles, and that I've sort of, my passion with music has been centered around physicality for so long. And I think piano kind of started that passion, and percussion being a much more physical instrument really emphasized that. And in college, where I fell in love with marimba was watching people like Eriko Daimo, Keiko Abe. Like those are the two names for me that like will always stick, and how they go beyond sort of like I call it like microscopic elements of technique, and they like embody, like every part of them is a part of their art and their music. And so I've found, I'm totally going off topic here.
You're totally fine.
No, but I found like that is the centerpiece for me and my, like, what I'm passionate about with music. So I can implement it in different areas, whether it's Blue Man rock or the marimba stuff. Just like how physicality can translate music more, I guess, dramatically, I guess is the word I'm looking for. Maybe that's not the best word to use, but it just contributes to communicating to an audience. And I think that is the element that I've carried across all of the different parts of music that I've been into.
Yeah.
And I think it applies to all of those different areas. So I love rock. Going back to your question, I love playing rock music. Right now I'm playing with the Mean Girls musical, which has so many different styles in it, which is really fun. I like diving into like all different areas. I think I'm finding, and I don't know. I try to keep like my curiosity going. I think about different things. So I hope I can settle like where my interests are at some point, but I like kind of dabbling in all different areas.
Right.
If that makes sense. Sorry, that was the most roundabout way of getting
You're totally fine. I mean, and speaking of like these great opportunities that you've had, starting with like Blue Man Group, I think one of the biggest questions, even for myself, and I'm sure for everybody listening, is how do you find these opportunities as someone who is a percussionist, and let's say like high school me was like ready to be a music major and ready to, you know, have this pipe dream of being able to tour everywhere and do all the things. Like, where do you get your start? And really, what would you say is like the secret of like networking or just getting these opportunities or having these opportunities fall into your lap somehow? Yeah.
Well, this will be another very roundabout way of getting to your question. But so when I made the decision to go to the University of Minnesota for school, my main motivation was that the professor I studied with, Fernando Mesa, is the original percussionist for The Lion King when it was in Minneapolis originally, before it moved to Broadway. And when I got into school, like that was what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a Broadway musician. So freshman year, I wrote a letter to the stage door of the band's visit because I was obsessed with it. It was just like one of the most beautiful stories and music wise, like so different from anything that had been there at the time. And I wanted to just see if the drummer would be willing to like answer some questions that I had. But that letter ended up becoming a trip to New York, and I ended up sitting in the pit and seeing the show, sitting next to him. His name's Philip Mayer. And that connection I made just from being curious about what he did ended up being who contacted me about the Blue Man Group audition like 3 years later.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
Yeah. And so I think the thing I would say sets you apart with networking is like, be curious, like always be curious about everybody and ask questions. Most people are more than happy to answer them. And I've found like most people I've met are super generous and have also found a way into the industry similar to how I'm describing, like just reaching out and then, you know, an opportunity comes around and they want to pass it on to you. I think, yeah, just being curious and being willing to be vulnerable, because it is scary when you're like, I'm a student, I don't know anything, you're amazing, will you answer my questions? Like, there is something very vulnerable about that, because if you are a fan of someone or idolize them, there's a chance, you know, there's always that chance that like, oh, maybe they won't see it or they won't respond. But I've found taking that chance is so rewarding, and in my experience, everybody is so lovely that is in the industry. So I would say, yeah, just like take the chance, ask the questions. And a lot of times just like having that genuine connection with somebody will end up paying off in the future. You literally never know where, like who you meet, where that will bring you at some point. Like nurture every relationship and every person that you come in contact with. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I could speak the same for myself. Yeah. Being in high school, I say this story all the time, but I was a part of, and I still am a part of, a Facebook group called like Musical Theater Drum and Percussion Talk or something like that. And in high school, I just made a post on the group saying, hey, my name is Amanda. I'm a high school student. I would really love to do this someday. Mm-hmm. Any advice similar to what you said, like any advice to like how to get in the industry? You know, I'm getting ready to graduate in a couple years and I want to figure out what my path to success is, right? Yeah. And through that post, similar to your story, like I was able to connect with the different MDs and sit in the pit for like Phantom when they came through San Antonio at the Majestic Theater, and I think there was another one called On Your Feet.
Oh, nice.
And so getting those opportunities, like it definitely is putting yourself out there. You never know until you try. And, you know, at the end of the day, the worst answer you can get is no. Mm-hmm. And as everybody says, you're going to get like 100 no's before you get a one yes, but it's like that one yes that really matters.
Yes.
And so, yeah, it's very similar stories as to putting yourself out there, getting curious, like networking and maintaining those network connections, and you never know what opportunity you might find.
Yeah. Yeah. And also, like, I would say for me at least, like I love, like networking is such an important thing. And network to me feels super like business oriented. And I would say like also lead those connections with like genuine curiosity as well. Like that's the other thing. I would say like most of the people I've connected with are like friends.
Absolutely.
You know, like, and so, yeah, networking, like, as a term feels businessy, but like, you know what I mean?
I totally get it. Like, you're not like you know, pick yourself up by your bootstraps and get in suits and like do the whole handshake thing. It's like nurturing those connections, like making real genuine connections outside of the I do this, what do you do?
Right.
And you know, through mutual friends like Kaylee, for example, she taught me at Crossman Winds, and it's by staying connected with her on social media, ended up in getting an opportunity to perform for like SeaWorld for like a contract thing.
Yeah.
And so, I could speak to that. It would have been very different where it's like, hi, I'm looking for XYZ
Yes.
position.
Yes.
Do you know something of how I can get into that? And it feels more transactional.
Yes.
And that's something even with this podcast that I've realized, like, you really have to treat people like
people
and humans. And
yeah.
And it can't be this like one way transactional thing. Like, oh, now I get this and that's it. Right. It's maintaining that relationship over time, checking in, seeing how they're doing, celebrating their wins, or being there for them during their low moments. So
yes, you said that way more eloquently than me. But yes, that's exactly. Yeah, I would say that that's also an element to networking too, is understanding that like it's not transactional. And if you, like really dedicating your time and energy into knowing that person and getting to know them. It's a big part of it.
Yeah. Speaking of your, other opportunities, let's dive into your what you're doing currently, which is being on the Mean Girls national tour. Like, tell me about that experience. What are some of the highlights? I know you're still currently on the tour. Like, what are some great moments or maybe some crazy moments that you would like to share? Yeah.
Well, I'm so brand new to it. I think I'm entering my third week officially on the job.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of, you never know when you're gonna like see people that you meet again. The lead for a while, and she actually just left, was the lead in our college production of Pippin. I met her like several years ago, and she was here. Yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, we have been on the road, or I've been on the road for about 3 weeks now. It's such a huge shift from what I've been doing, and I love it. It's been really cool to like sink my teeth into something very different, and the approach is different than Blue Man. I'm remoted. So? Yeah, I'm remoted in the pit, but just like what my role is for Blue Man, I was more soloistic. And also with Blue Man, like there's no music, and it's very there are elements of like improv in it and being spontaneous with what's happening on stage, where this is more like more structure, way more styles, and being able to like adjust where I'm sitting, even in like the click, depending on the song, all of those things, a lot more like stylistic things I need to be aware of. And I'm playing with more live musicians too, which has been like, I love that. I'm very, very excited to be like, it's actually a pretty big pit. I think we have 7 or 8 people traveling at all times.
Oh, wow.
Which is really cool. So I've really enjoyed that part of it. And also like the cast is so talented. There are songs that like every night I get chills when we get to them. They're just so good. So yeah.
Did you, before getting this job, were you like a fan of the musical or heard the soundtrack
Major fan of this musical. Like, yes. And that's the other really cool thing about this in college. I like fangirled so hard about this book. And so it's really surreal that I'm playing it now. And every night, like the opening number, I'm just like, yes, so fun. I'm having the best time. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite song besides like the opening number that you play?
Yeah. Our Regina George shouting out Maya is amazing. Everybody is amazing, but when Maya has someone gets hurt in World Burn, for me, every single time I'm just like, this is like, there's a vibe in the room. Like you can feel it. It's just so magical. So I'd say both of those pieces for me are like the one.
Nice.
So,
has you playing like in the musical at all changed your perspective, or just changed, let's just say your perspective from being a fan to now being a member of the cast?
I think it's cool when you have interest in something to like figure out how the gears turn, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's now getting to play the music and seeing like I'm always really interested in like the foreshadowing and like symbolism and all of that. And I think there's moments where like you can find that in music as well, where things are quoted or requoted in different moments.
Yeah.
And there's a couple songs that have like very similar structure and like rhythms to them that are intended to like kind of connect the dots between where this character is at this, in act 1 versus act 2. So like now having the score there and like seeing how that all works for me is like super interesting, and knowing that like there was the intention behind it to have these like connections.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
So.
Speaking of that and like how, it's scored and everything, you, as you mentioned before, like to write music. And so I know you have like a piece out called La Fortuna and all that. Where did writing music start? And did you take composition classes, or is it something that you've just kind of always loved and enjoyed doing?
It actually came about my freshman year of college. We had this joint concert with the University of Minnesota and University of Costa Rica. Fernando Mesa, who I studied with, is from from Costa Rica and is sort of one of the founders of the program that exists there now at the university. So we do a lot of like collaborations with them. And it was my first time playing with like a large group of international students from a country that at the time I really didn't know much about. And that week, which ended up becoming 2 because I went to PASIC with them after, was one of the like most unforgettable weeks of my life. And they're still like very dear friends to me. But some of those people that I met, I was just really inspired by them and their music. And so I haven't taken any composition classes, just from studying like scores and being a nerd. I was like, I'm going to try this. And so I wrote that piece about that connection I had made with them. And just like how beautiful music can be to bring people from all different walks of life together. And there's that piece is also inspired by Rachmaninoff Prelude in G minor. I'm a big Rachmaninoff fan. And it's like about like two elements, like fire, water, kind of becoming coexisting in one place, representing like us US people and UCR people. And like that music was the force that kind of brought us together. Even with a language barrier, a lot of the times like we could find ways of communicating with each other and like connecting through art. And I just found that amazing.
That's awesome. I also earlier had seen like a video, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's called like Cherry Limeade. And I thought that was like really cool.
Yeah, that was with them as well. Over COVID, we were trying to figure out like how to stay creative. And that I had this weird longing to learn how to use Ableton during the pandemic. And that piece is that was like the first time I ever used it. Now looking back at it, I want to do it again now that I know more things. But this is actually a perfect example. Like I learned Ableton just for fun during that time because there was nothing else to do, and I was going stir crazy. I was at my parents' house. I loved them, but so, they would understand. I'm sure they were also going stir crazy. So I would just sit in my room and like mess around with Ableton, and that actually ended up applying to Blue Man in the future, like a few years later, not knowing that it was going to be important to know how to use it. But yeah, we made that collaboration during COVID to try and just like find a way to be close to one another. And it was cool that it was able to work across. I think we were all in 3 countries: Venezuela, Costa Rica, and the US.
That's so awesome.
Yeah.
And speaking of Ableton, you recently did a workshop with Cirque du Soleil.
Yes.
How did that opportunity randomly come about? Did you audition, or what was a part of that workshop?
Yeah, so I auditioned in London, actually, after Blue Man had its last show in Paris. There was an audition a week after, and so I took it. And yeah, I've been in discussions with a lot of them about this workshop. It's been in the works for a couple months, and it was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. It was an amazing week. I didn't really know what I was getting myself into.
As one does.
Yeah, but I learned so much, and it like really pushed me in ways that I didn't know I could be. Mm-hmm. I learned a lot about myself, I feel like, in that week. But yeah, basically we had like a workshop for, I think it was 4 days or so. And we were given, like, in the process of creating a show, the composer will write a score, and then they'll record like stems in a recording studio, and a programmer will then build a session in Ableton that's malleable to the show that's happening live, where you have, acrobats that are out for the day, or musicians that are out, tricks that change, and just being able to, like, on a whim, 10 minutes before show, make the adjustments and go. And so, being a self-taught Ableton person, I was like, well, what have I gotten myself into here?
Yeah.
But it really pushed me, and it was amazing. We ended up, we were all assigned like an act to program. And then at the end of the week, we performed it live. We all got the music for each piece that we were assigned. And we also, there'd be someone band leading, that would be the programmer. Mm-hmm. And then everyone else would play live with it. With a video in real time of the acrobats doing whatever the trick was. And it was magical. It was unreal to even be at the headquarters. Mm-hmm. It's so cool. It's so cool there.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I saw that, because I saw that you had gotten the opportunity to do Mean Girls, and I know you were on tour, and then just like randomly did this workshop. I was like, where'd you find the time? Like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. I knew about the workshop, before jumping onto Mean Girls, and that was one thing. I was like, hey, is it okay if I do this, because I really, really want to? Yeah. And they were accommodating, which was so awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And into that, and being like kind of self-taught Ableton, you also play bass, which is like what do you not do at this point? Is that something that you are also self-taught, or you had like a mentor?
Self-taught. Okay. Very, very self-taught. I would say I play bass loosely.
Oh, okay. Well, you play more than I do, so I would consider that.
I was actually going through a really rough patch at one point, and I was like, I don't want to play percussion for a minute. I need to give it like a breather. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to keep playing somehow. And so I am a huge Hiatus Coyote fan, massive, and obsessed with Bender, their bass player, and everything that he does, and Esperanza Spalding. And so when I was in this rut, I was like, I really want to like try to learn some things. Mm-hmm. And I just like fell in love with it. And so it was kind of like my way of continuing to be creative and contribute to my technique in a different way, just like strengthening my fingers, but doing something a little bit different that didn't have, it's fun to have instruments where you don't have coaching sometimes, because I think it allows you to like have more freedom in it. There's not a right or a wrong. And at the time that was really helpful for me to like get over that hump. And now I've been just continuing to kind of dabble with it. Yeah, it's super fun. I highly recommend to everybody. Pick up the bass. It's a great instrument.
Yeah, I mean, I see all the time, through Instagram, like all the videos that you post, and being able to like, of course, like video edit it like with drums and bass and guitar. I was like, you are definitely the all-time multi-instrumentalist.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Which, by the way, just this is totally unrelated, but even before going on the Mean Girls tour, your video editing skills as a video editor myself are top notch.
Thank you.
Was that also self-taught?
Yeah. Just I used to make this is also very off topic. As a kid, like was obsessed with making home movies.
Okay.
And like any opportunity in school, like high school, elementary, to make a video for some reason, I would do it. I had like a green screen and it was horrible, like horrible editing. But I remember we made like a trailer and my friend was like falling from a building, and I have like a vivid memory of this like green halo around her. And like I just have always like really loved it. It's been fun. And yeah, I don't know. Like I as an artist, I feel like an artist more than a musician sometimes, just because like I find every aspect of it so interesting, from like cinematography and like audio engineering. Like everything is, there's so many gears in the like machine, and I just am curious about all of them, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to that as both a percussionist and someone who does media. Like I was the same way with, it started with a GoPro, and I would just record all my drumming concerts and then use that to post on YouTube as like my performance reel. And from there, when I actually got gifted like my first like real like DSLR camera, I picked up video editing, and it's actually kind of funny because I know a lot of percussionists now that like know how to video edit, and I'm like there has to be some connection there in our like skill sets. Obviously with tempo and rhythm, we were able to like cut to the music fairly well, but yeah, that was just something like a nod based on what I've seen being connected on social media. I'm like, what can Mackenna not do at this point?
Thank you. I mean, a lot of things, but thank you.
Yeah, of course. So with that being said, like a couple last questions I want to ask you is, with all of your experience and everything that you have done, what have you found to be the most fulfilling part of your life in all the different aspects?
Well, this is a loaded question.
I'm ready to hear it.
I think it kind of goes back to where like I found my passion in physicality, which has definitely helped with Blue Man, and even with like my Cirque du Soleil audition as well. I started becoming really obsessed with all of the people I loved and like figuring out what it was that I loved so much about them. Like why? Like Nate Smith is a big influencer for me. Hiatus, Chapel Roan. And then also in like the orchestral world, Julie Spencer, Teo Milkov, Erica Daimo. Like what is it about them? I want to figure this out. Like they're so amazing. And what it comes down to is that they're different, I think, from, like the conventional thing, like the conventional technique. Like they've expanded on it. And so I've just found it really rewarding to start exploring like what makes me tick individually as an artist, or like what would set me apart. And I feel like I was in an environment in school that was really supportive of like discovering who you are as a musician. And with that mindset has also come this really awesome thing where like you can no longer look at your peers, your colleagues, students in your studio as your competitors, because everybody brings their own thing to the table. Yeah. And so just like exploring what is possible beyond the technique that we're taught in school, which is also, might I say, like very important. Yes. So I'm not saying that, but like that's the foundation, I think. And then the next step is like, where am I in this? Which has been really cool. And there's things outside of music that also contribute to that as well. Like I've learned a lot about my mental health and like all of those things are factors that play into music. And I think sometimes we forget that. And I think it's really important to remember that like eating and sleeping and drinking water and all of those things are also a part of being a great musician and like being successful. And all things I've had to learn, and I'm still learning more constantly. But yeah, I think figuring out who you are as an artist is the most rewarding thing, and being different or doing something different or that hasn't been done before is a good thing most of the time. Yeah, and I've loved every moment of it, and I'm still, like I said, learning. I feel so brand new to this world of like professional, music. And I've had so many incredible people that I've met through Blue Man, through Mean Girls, through so many different avenues that have been really supportive in like building that up, and then I in return. Yeah, it's also just rewarding, like I said, to not have like the competitive part of it, like being able to really support people and feel like genuinely so happy for their success and not having the comparison thing, which can be really hard. Yeah. I feel like in what we do, especially when you're in school and you're, studying with the same person and maybe learning similar things, to separate yourself and remember that like I am me and I bring something different. And even if we're going for the same job, we'll never play the same that one passage the same way, no matter how many times we try to do it. Yeah. So
yeah, that was amazing.
Thank you.
That was awesome. And even to that note, like one of the biggest things that's really important about this podcast that I say all the time on this podcast is like when you get to a point where like of a moment of success or comfortability, it's not about building a higher fence but a longer table. And that's something that's so important that I live and breathe by every day. And I think that's an amazing thing of what you're doing is like we don't create these competitive spaces. Yes, the music industry and specifically in instrumentalist land can be like somewhat competitive, but I really love the fact of through both of our experiences of reaching out and people willing to share their experience, so they can pass on to the next generation of musicians that can continue to keep doing what we're doing. I think is really important. And specifically even your work in like music advocacy and supporting artists in all different facets is like really important. I'm so glad and so excited that we could do this.
Yes, me too. Thank you so much. Yeah.
With that being said, as like a lasting thought, looking back on your experience, kind of like a two-part question, is what advice would you give your younger self, and or what advice would you like to leave our listeners with of like the biggest thing that you have learned in your career?
Oh, that's another loaded question. Yeah, I think for the listeners, the curiosity thing is really important. That is what I've led my career with so far for the few years that I've been like doing this, and asking questions. I would say like ask as many questions as you can all the time. And for me, I will always consider myself a student of the world. There's always something to learn. There's always some part of even like something you've been doing for a very long time that I'm sure you could, learn more about. It's great, like expertise is great, but I feel like there's always room to grow, and like questions and being curious doesn't show like a lack of understanding, but rather like I feel like encourages growth and shows that you want to grow.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it can have a negative connotation, but to me, at least in my mind, asking questions is like I'm looking to be better or like get better at something, which I think is great. For me, let me think back. I would say the biggest thing is letting, like, my art is for me also a very like moral thing. And so following those beliefs and not swaying from them, which is very hard. Sometimes that's what I would tell the me from a few years ago, just like stick with it and stick with what you believe as an artist or even outside of that is right for you and works for you, because it pays off in the end.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Again, so excited to share your story with our listeners and share the mission of this with you. Where can people find you if you want to plug anything or social media?
Sure. You can find me. I'll spell my name because it's a little bit of a weird way to spell it. You can find me on Instagram at MackennaTolfa_. Is that what it is?
I think so.
I'll put it in the show notes. Yes. TikTok's the same. And YouTube as well is just my name.
Awesome. Well, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Femme Forte. I hope this conversation left you feeling inspired, empowered, and just a little more connected to your own creative journey. Be sure to follow today's guests and support the incredible work they're doing. You can find all their links in the episode description. And if you enjoy this episode, I'd love for you to share it with a friend, leave a rating or review, and follow Femme Forte wherever you get your podcasts.